Hello, and welcome to our video on the criminal aspects of healthcare. I'm Dr. Cornejo, thrilled to guide you through this fascinating and important topic. Whether you're a student of health administration, a practicing clinician, or someone intrigued by the intersection of law and medicine, you've come to the right place. In this video series, we'll explore how the criminal justice system interacts with healthcare, ranging from fraud and abuse cases that challenge ethical standards to violations of sensitive health information that compromise patient privacy, to acts of neglect or misconduct that lead to severe legal repercussions. My goal is to present a practical and academic perspective that's both engaging and easy to understand. We'll begin by defining key terms and reviewing major statutes that govern criminal activity in healthcare. Then, we'll examine notable case studies to see how these laws are applied in real-world settings. Throughout this series, we'll discuss strategies to minimize legal risk and uphold the highest standards of patient care and ethical practice. By the end of our journey, you'll have a solid grasp of the legal frameworks, ethical considerations, and potential consequences of criminal behavior in healthcare settings. This information is vital for anyone committed to fostering a compliant, safe, and accountable environment. So, grab a notebook, get comfortable, and let's begin our exploration of the criminal aspects of healthcare. I look forward to learning together and encouraging open, productive discussions about this crucial topic. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy this video series. Criminal law as a body of law. First, criminal law is traditionally understood as the body of rules and statutes that identify specific offenses, such as theft, assault, or fraud, outline the legal processes surrounding these offenses, and prescribe appropriate punishments, fines, imprisonment, or other sanctions. This view emphasizes the formal structure of criminal law, how it is written, enforced, and adjudicated in courts to maintain order. Criminal law as society's limits. Second, criminal law can also be viewed more broadly as society's expression of what is considered unacceptable behavior. This perspective highlights that crimes are not just legal violations, but also social harms that the community deems worthy of formal punishment or intervention. By labeling certain actions as criminal, society sets boundaries for conduct, seeks to deter wrongdoing through penalties, and in many cases aims to rehabilitate offenders so they can safely rejoin the community. Overall, the objectives of criminal law include preserving public order and well-being, ensuring a stable social environment, safeguarding society from harm, protecting individuals and institutions from criminal acts, deterrence, using punishment to discourage both the offender and others from committing similar offenses, rehabilitation, providing opportunities and interventions that help offenders avoid reoffending and reintegrate into society. Taken together, these definitions and objectives underscore criminal law's dual nature. It is both a set of formal rules and punishments and a reflection of societal values that aim to protect the public and uphold acceptable standards of behavior. Criminal offenses in healthcare management can arise when laws protecting patient welfare, privacy, or financial integrity are violated. A crime is generally any act or omission causing social harm that the law recognizes and punishes. In healthcare, examples include fraudulent billing or unauthorized disclosure of patient data, both actions deemed harmful to individuals and the wider community. A misdemeanor is an offense punishable by imprisonment of less than 1 year and/or a fine. In healthcare contexts, certain smaller-scale regulatory infractions might be charged as misdemeanors. For instance, a healthcare administrator who negligently mishandles patient records, resulting in a minor data breach, might face misdemeanor charges if the harm is limited and quickly contained. While still serious, the penalty is proportionate to the lesser severity of the violation. A felony, by contrast, is a serious crime punishable by more than 1 year of imprisonment in state or federal prison. In healthcare, large-scale insurance fraud, significant drug diversion, e.g. theft and resale of controlled substances, or deliberate patient neglect leading to severe harm can be charged as felonies. These offenses pose greater risks to patient safety and public trust, warranting the more stringent legal consequences associated with felony convictions. All right, everyone, let's take a look at this slide on criminal procedure. It states, criminal procedure lays out the rules governing how suspected violations of criminal law are investigated, prosecuted, and adjudicated. It covers every stage of a case, from initial investigation and arrest through arraignment and plea bargaining, all the way to trial and sentencing. This process applies to both misdemeanors, less serious offenses, and felonies, more serious crimes. Now, in healthcare management, it's especially important to understand these steps because regulatory breaches or fraud allegations can lead to criminal investigations. As healthcare managers, you need to be aware of your organization's rights and responsibilities if law enforcement becomes involved, whether it's responding to a subpoena or ensuring staff understand confidentiality rules. For healthcare management, understanding criminal procedure is crucial because regulatory breaches or fraud allegations can lead to criminal investigations. Managers need to know the basic steps if they or their organization become subjects of an inquiry, and to ensure that patient and institutional rights are respected. For instance, awareness of due process requirements can help managers cooperate appropriately with law enforcement, protect sensitive records, and adhere to confidentiality rules. Keep in mind, criminal procedure is a broad, complex area of law. We're focusing on the key elements here: how charges are filed, what happens during plea deals, the judge and jury's role, and how penalties differ between misdemeanors and felonies. With this foundation, healthcare managers can better protect their organizations and maintain ethical standards. Please note, criminal procedure is an extensive area of law, and we're offering only a brief overview here. However, the key elements you should understand include how charges are filed, how plea deals might be negotiated, the role of the judge and jury, and the differences in penalties between misdemeanors and felonies. With this foundation, healthcare managers can better navigate potential legal challenges and help maintain a compliant, ethical workplace. Arrest marks the beginning of many criminal prosecutions. It can occur when a police officer takes an individual into custody, or when a court issues an arrest warrant or summons after a formal complaint is filed. The next critical stage is arraignment, where the accused hears the formal charges during a reading of the accusatory instrument, a general term covering various legal documents alleging an offense. At this hearing, bail is usually set, determining if the defendant can await trial outside of detention. Both steps are foundational, ensuring the defendant is formally notified of the charges and the legal process begins. Next, let's talk about indictments. In felony cases, criminal proceedings often begin with either a felony complaint or a grand jury indictment. Typically, the prosecution presents evidence to a grand jury, and if they find reasonable cause to believe all elements of a crime are present, they issue an indictment, essentially charging the individual with a felony. Key points: grand jury involvement. The grand jury reviews evidence and can call witnesses to testify under subpoena. Defendant rights. The accused has the option to testify or remain silent and can even choose to waive presentation to the grand jury and proceed directly to a plea or trial. Formal charges. Once the grand jury returns an indictment, a judge is notified, and the defendant is scheduled for arraignment on those charges. Understanding indictments is crucial for anyone in healthcare management who might encounter legal scrutiny, ensuring you're aware of their rights, processes, and potential outcomes when a felony charge is involved. Once a defendant has pleaded not guilty, both felony and misdemeanor cases typically proceed to a conference. During this phase, plea bargaining often begins, with all parties aiming for a mutually acceptable resolution, such as a reduced charge or a recommended sentence. If no agreement is reached, the court will schedule motions and possible further conferences. After multiple adjournments, if the prosecution and defense still cannot agree, the case is eventually assigned to a trial court. For example, imagine a hospital administrator accused of billing fraud. If they plead not guilty at their arraignment, the case would enter the conference stage. There, prosecutors and defense counsel might negotiate a plea deal, perhaps agreeing on lesser charges if the administrator admits culpability and cooperates. If they fail to reach an agreement, the dispute proceeds through additional conferences and motions before a trial is ultimately scheduled. Okay, everyone, let's talk about the criminal trial process in this slide. First, we have jury selection. Both the prosecution and defense will ask questions to make sure potential jurors can be fair and impartial. Next, they deliver opening statements where each side outlines what they plan to prove. After that, we see the presentation of witnesses and evidence. The prosecution in particular has the burden of proving its case beyond a reasonable doubt. That means they must convince the jury that the defendant committed the crime, leaving almost no room for reasonable questions of innocence. Once all evidence is presented, we move on to summations, or closing arguments, where both sides recap the case. Then, the judge gives instructions to the jury explaining legal standards and how they should approach their verdict. The jury then deliberates, and in most jurisdictions, their verdict, whether guilty or not guilty, must be unanimous. Finally, if the jury convicts the defendant, there's an opportunity for appeal, where higher courts can review potential legal errors. So, now as an example, imagine a hospital administrator accused of Medicare fraud. During the trial, the prosecution might present patient billing records and testimony from auditors, while the defense disputes the allegations, arguing there was no fraudulent intent. After both sides finish, the jury would deliberate, and if they reach a unanimous guilty verdict, the administrator can still appeal if they believe there were mistakes in the trial process. That covers our overview of the criminal trial process. Remember, each step is designed to ensure fairness and protect the rights of both the defendant and the public. Healthcare fraud. This topic is vital for anyone in healthcare management because fraud doesn't just hurt the bottom line. It undermines patient trust and puts entire organizations at legal and financial risk. Understanding how fraud happens, who investigates it, and what laws protect against it can help managers prevent and detect wrongdoing before it escalates. First, let's define healthcare fraud. It involves an unlawful act, typically deception or misrepresentation for personal gain. This illegal act places a substantial financial burden on the healthcare system. The FBI is the primary agency responsible for uncovering and investigating healthcare fraud, and it collaborates with various federal agencies, as well as state and local agencies. In addition, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996, HIPAA, provides essential civil and criminal enforcement tools to combat these crimes. Under HIPAA, the U.S. Attorney General and the Secretary of Health and Human Services must coordinate a national healthcare fraud and abuse control program, bringing together federal, state, and local law enforcement, private entities, and the public. The HHS Office of Inspector General, OIG, is at the forefront of this effort, focusing on identifying and preventing waste, fraud, and abuse across Medicare, Medicaid, and more than 100 other HHS programs. As healthcare managers, recognizing the warning signs of fraud and knowing the agencies and laws involved can protect your organization's finances, reputation, and most importantly, patient well-being. Fraud investigations can be lengthy and damaging, so it's far better to foster a culture of integrity and compliance from the start. This slide outlines several key attributes and tactics commonly associated with healthcare fraud. Deception for personal gain. Fraud typically involves misleading practices intended to secure financial or other personal benefits. Acts characterized by intentional deception. Unlike honest mistakes or billing errors, healthcare fraud requires proof that the wrongdoing was done deliberately. Financial drain on the healthcare system. Fraudulent activities siphon off funds that could otherwise support legitimate patient services and programs. Knowingly presenting a false claim for payment. A fraudulent claim is submitted with the awareness that it is untrue, e.g., billing for services not actually provided, making a false record to get a false claim paid. This can include falsifying documentation or inflating statements so an illegitimate claim appears legitimate. Conspiring to defraud the government, parties may work together, knowingly or unknowingly, to manipulate billing or reporting systems, especially for government-funded programs like Medicare or Medicaid, making a false record to avoid obligations. In some cases, fraud involves creating documents to hide or withhold payments that are lawfully owed, preventing the government from collecting due funds. Now, let's shift our focus to corporate compliance and how it helps prevent fraud in healthcare organizations. An effective compliance program is more than just a set of rules. It's a framework that promotes ethical behavior and protects your organization from legal risks. Here are the key elements: developing appropriate policies and procedures, clearly defining acceptable practices, and providing concrete guidelines ensures everyone understands what is expected. Appointing a compliance officer. This individual oversees the program, coordinates compliance efforts, and serves as a point of contact for questions and concerns. Communicating the organization's compliance program to employees, ongoing training, and accessible resources help staff recognize potential fraudulent activities and act ethically. Monitoring and auditing systems, regular reviews and audits are essential for detecting red flags or criminal conduct by employees or other agents before problems escalate. Publicizing a reporting system, employees must be able to report suspicious behavior without fear of retaliation. A safe reporting channel fosters transparency and accountability. Responding to and preventing criminal conduct. When violations occur, organizations should investigate thoroughly, take corrective action, and implement preventive measures to avoid repeats. Periodically reviewing and updating the program, regulation and risks evolve. Regular assessments help keep policies current and effective. Collaborating with law enforcement and regulatory agencies by sharing information and working together with federal or state agencies and even insurance companies, organizations can more effectively detect, prevent, and prosecute a healthcare fraud. When these elements come together, they create a culture of integrity, reduce legal exposure, and maintain the trust of patients, staff, and the broader community. Now, let's take a look at a few schemes to defraud that can occur in healthcare billing. These are just examples. Unfortunately, fraudulent tactics can take many forms. First, we have upcoding for medical supplies or equipment. This happens when a healthcare provider uses a higher paying billing code than what actually corresponds to the item or service provided. Let's say a patient received a standard wheelchair, but the claim submitted lists a more expensive specialized model to get higher reimbursement. That would be upcoding. Next is unbundling, which means separating what should be billed together as a single service into multiple components, effectively charging more. For instance, routine lab tests might be billed individually rather than as part of a bundled panel, inflating the total cost. Keep in mind, these examples represent only a small fraction of potential schemes. Recognizing and preventing these practices is crucial for healthcare administrators looking to maintain ethical standards and avoid legal troubles. Let's talk about some common forms of provider fraud in healthcare. This is crucial for administrators to understand, as it directly impacts compliance and patient trust. Billing for unnecessary services. This refers to charging for procedures or treatments that aren't medically indicated. For example, ordering tests that have no clinical benefit just to increase billing. Accepting kickbacks for patient referrals. Here, providers receive financial or other rewards for directing patients to specific services or facilities. Such arrangements not only inflate costs, but also compromise ethical care, as decisions may be driven by profit rather than patient need. Waiving patient copays or deductibles. While it might appear as a favor to patients, regularly waiving copays or deductibles can be a form of fraud, particularly if it's done to gain more business or misrepresent the true cost of services to insurers. Overbilling. This can occur when providers inflate the cost of services, use higher reimbursement codes than warranted, or charge for services not actually rendered. Understanding and avoiding these practices is essential for maintaining integrity, ensuring compliance with the law, and safeguarding the financial viability of healthcare organizations. In this slide, we can see the three essential elements that prosecutors must establish when proving fraud. A systemic scheme or course of conduct. The prosecution needs to show that the defendant engaged in a pattern of deceptive behavior, not just a one-time isolated incident. In other words, there's a consistent or repeated method of defrauding. Intent to defraud multiple parties. Fraud is more than just an accidental mistake. There must be evidence the defendant knowingly tried to deceive more than one person, perhaps patients, insurers, or business partners, indicating a deliberate plan to cheat. Obtain property from at least one identified victim. Finally, the prosecution has to prove that the scheme was successful at least once, resulting in the actual transfer of money or property from a specific individual or entity. These criteria underscore that fraud typically involves ongoing, intentional deception aimed at multiple targets with tangible losses. In healthcare contexts, this might appear as repeated false claims or billing schemes knowingly submitted to insurers or government programs, leading to real financial gains. Demonstrating all three elements is crucial for a conviction on fraud charges. All right, everyone, these two next slides offer several examples of how healthcare fraud can manifest in real-world situations, without going into too much detail. One involves billing for medications that were never accurately provided, or charging for more expensive brand names while dispensing cheaper generics. Another set of examples highlights unnecessary treatments or surgeries performed solely to inflate reimbursements, jeopardizing patient health for profit. We also see a scenario where patients are recruited and paid to undergo needless procedures, and the resulting claims are submitted at inflated rates. Next, there are instances of false billing practices and upcoding, where providers deliberately list a higher service level or fictitious diagnosis to increase payments. We also find cases where individuals intentionally misrepresent the type of care they're delivering or misreport costs and services, all to obtain larger reimbursements. These examples underscore the creativity and severity of schemes that exploit both insurance companies and government programs. If you'd like more specific details or want to understand the legal principles behind these examples, please consult the assigned sections in your textbook. They provide a thorough breakdown of each scenario, legal outcomes, and the lessons we can learn as future healthcare managers. In this slide, let's talk about how physicians themselves can become victims of fraud within their own practices and a few key steps to prevent it. Become familiar with patient billing and record-keeping practices. Physicians often rely on staff to manage billing and records. However, having at least a basic understanding of these processes can help you spot irregularities, like unexpected billing patterns or missing documentation. It also fosters a culture of accountability, reminding employees that management is knowledgeable and actively involved. Avoid having one individual in charge of billing and collection procedures. When one person has complete control over both billing and collections, it's easier for fraudulent activity to go unnoticed. Splitting responsibilities, for example, one staff member for entering charges and another for processing payments, establishes checks and balances. This separation of duties reduces the risk of internal theft or manipulation. Arrange for an annual audit of office procedures and records by an outside auditor. Regular external audits provide an impartial review of financial records, billing codes, and compliance measures. An experienced auditor can detect red flags or inefficiencies that might be overlooked by staff who see the same paperwork day after day. Plus, the presence of an external review process encourages employees to maintain accurate, honest records year-round. By following these guidelines, physicians can help protect themselves and their practices against fraud. Let me read this text to you. Behind every healthcare fraud is a lack of ethical behavior. So every instance of healthcare fraud can be traced to a breakdown in ethical principles. Healthcare providers have a fiduciary responsibility to act in the best interests of their patients, ensuring that treatments, billing processes, and overall operations remain grounded in fairness and honesty. When these moral compass points fail, providers may resort to illegitimate measures, such as billing for services never rendered or prescribing unnecessary procedures for financial gain. Such actions not only drain valuable resources from the healthcare system, but also jeopardize patient trust and safety. Without an ethical foundation, individuals can rationalize dishonest behavior, and entire organizations may cultivate cultures of compliance in name only. Ultimately, healthcare fraud undermines the credibility of medical professionals, wastes taxpayer dollars, and inflates the cost of care for everyone. Moreover, repeated ethical lapses erode patients' confidence in the legitimacy and integrity of the medical field, leading to potentially dangerous delays in seeking necessary care. Therefore, instilling robust ethical training and accountability measures is paramount. By reinforcing responsible decision-making, transparency, and professional integrity, healthcare leaders can help prevent unethical practices from taking root, thereby protecting patients and preserving the public's trust in the healthcare system. Ethical vigilance is the cornerstone of trustworthy medicine.